He finally gets out of the sewers. Then he comes out and he lives to fight another day. They go to get a package that they think is coming down, hopefully from the Russians. The Russians were spottily giving them aid, if at best. They go to get one, and he and his comrade go, and they see this suddenly a huge flash happens. A mortar shell comes down, a German mortar shell, explodes.
And that's what he was most terrified of.
Yes, because he said, it's interesting, my father said if you're killed, he didn't care. He thought, okay, at one point I'm probably going to die for my country. And he was more concerned about being eviscerated because he was worried that his parents would have no body. Vaporized, and then no one would remember who you were or see any trace of you.
Or have a place what was moving. He didn't feel someone would have a place to come to mourn him and to honor him.
And isn't that interesting that he was thinking that even as a teenager? Remember, all this was happening.
He was a teenager, yeah. It's
through
amazing.
all this. And so he went to get the package. The mortar shell exploded. And his comrade died basically on the spot. And my father was totally unconscious, seriously injured in his legs and arms. Rushed to a first aid station. They're not official first aid. It's the back of a building. And you can imagine what it was like operating at that point. They had two guys sitting on his legs, nurses on his arms.
What was amazing
no anesthesia.
Well, that was what was amazing to me. And that was one of the points I wanted to bring up, that initially when you have trauma, you don't feel it, and he didn't really realize how badly he'd been injured. But then, when he was in the hospital, the so-called hospital, and the surgeon had to take out the shrapnel without any anesthesia, without any vodka, without even something for him to bite on except his tongue, his profound pain, and yet he was able to tolerate it and handle it. And I think it's such a lesson for people who have aches and pains that they go through in their daily life, and they think that it is so limiting to their life, and yet there are people who tolerate this unbearable pain, who just go on and do what they have to do. And that was a very moving part of the story.
Well, you think that there's a psychological component to pain that we were talking about a little earlier this week in preparation for the show, right?
Yeah, I think that, I know that especially people who have chronic pain have emotional problems that they can relate to. When I really delve into their lives, often they had difficult times with their parents. They had problems in their relationships. And that it's so important for them to go back to understand what their parents were all about.
Tying the two together.
Tying together to be able to overcome their own pain.
Absolutely. And I think it's incredible. If my father can get through that, hopefully it's a measure that anybody can get through it.
Absolutely. We'll be back again in a minute.
The book is Quiet Hero by Rita Cosby. Now, what we do on this show, Rita, just so you know, is, there's heavy medical stuff, and then laughter is the best medicine. So Reverend Frank is calling in next on Balk Talk Live.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
He'd like to speak with you. He's a big fan of yours.
Oh, no, trouble. I can't wait for this.
Trouble. It's 710 WOR.
We're back with Rita Cosby talking about her extraordinary book, Quiet Hero, Secrets from My Father's Past. So I have one question I really want to ask you. We're talking about parents.
I'm not single. Is that for you or Bobby? Or Noah?
We're both married to blondes.
There we go, Noah.
It's for Noah.
But
Okay.
I really want, this is a question that wasn't answered for me in the book. Why your father wasn't reunited with his parents after the war?
He couldn't. And if you look at the history of what happened in Poland, the communists came over. And talk about, first they had to deal with the Nazis, then the communists took over the country. And my father was on a list, basically, of resistance fighters. And there was such horrible ill will. So after all this, can you imagine, you fight for your country, and then my father had to declare himself stateless because he was afraid if he went back to Poland, he'd be shot and killed by the communists. But my father, my favorite part of the story, I'll just tell you real quick, 90 pounds, 6 feet tall, my father escapes from a POW camp. He's in the woods for 2.5 days, and a plane comes by. They think it's a German plane. They dive for the ditches. And it turns out to be an American plane. And it was a chocolate bar with a note wrapped around it. And the note said, basically, you're safe. You can walk now during daytime. You have 15 miles to walk and you're free. And at that point, my dad said, I am coming to America because this is the best country in the world for American troops to save my dad.
That was another part of the book that brought tears to my eyes.
And I get choked up thinking about it.
Lots of parts of the book brought tears to my eyes. But we want to hear from Reverend Frank, who's calling, because he's got some comments. He's a fan
The
of
deep
yours.
south. The deep south.
Reverend Frank,
where's
are you
Reverend
there
Frank?
with us?
Where in the South are you, Frank?
Well, what a wonderful, wonderful privilege for me to talk to you, Ms. Cosby. I'm in Atlanta where you're melting. Everyone is melting. But what a great story you told, and everyone has heard of your father, the great Bill Cosby. What a humorist.
Excuse me.
What a humorist who has given
Reverend
the
Frank,
family
excuse
humor
me.
when he's had these horrible
Reverend
experiences.
Frank, Reverend Frank, I think that you weren't listening very closely to the rest of the program, because Rita's father is not Bill Cosby, but Richard Cosby.
Actually, Ed, I have a confession. It is Bill Cosby.
Well, and I love his shows.
The Cosby
but
Kids?
I want to tell you, if I'm confused, Rita, I understand that you were doing the Lord's work on Fox TV, and then somehow Satan got a hold of you and convinced you to go to MSNBC. What did he say to you to convince you to go to the same show that Chris Matthews is on? After all,
You know what? You know, the evil Satan added a few more zeros on my paycheck. You know.
but Rita, Chris Matthews is a reincarnation of Linda Blair, and his head spins at 360 degrees. What caused you to go there?
Well, you know what? They said
money.
Reverend Frank is not available, and I said, I lost my mind. That's what happened.
Well, if you lose your mind, you can run for office here in the South.
You know of a good position that's open?
But but I have to pray for you. And of course, while we're praying, it'll cost just a little bit of money because we
Don't worry. My new friend Ed said whatever I need, and then Bobby said he would also represent me as well. So I think I'm in good hands.
Oh, Lord. Well, Reverend Frank, we're so blessed that you have come and prayed with us here tonight.
What an honor to be with a man of that caliber.
Thank you, Reverend Frank.
Thank you,
What
Reverend
an
Frank.
honor.
And Rita Cosby, thank you so much for being on our show. It's been an honor to speak with you, and your
Thank
book
you.
is phenomenal. I encourage everybody to get it. Quiet Hero, Secrets from My Father's Past. I'm sure it's available in all bookstores, Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And please go and buy it and read it.
And it's also quiethero.org is the website. We're giving proceeds to wounded soldiers and their families. So quiethero.org. So great cause.
Thanks,
Great
Rita.
cause. Get the book.
Back Talk Live is sponsored by Sleepy's. Is your back pain a total nightmare? Sleepy's expert mattress professionals will find you the perfect mattress to put your aches and pains to bed. Sleepy's the most trusted name in mattresses. Back Talk Live is an Aptic production produced by Bob Knight of Harrison Edwards, engineered by Noah Fleischman. Special thanks to our special guests tonight, Rita Cosby and Frank Siegel. Dr. Ed Cornell can be contacted at Brain and Spine Surgeons of New York at 914-948-0444. We'll see you next Sunday night on 710 WOR.